So when I was 16, my father, we were living in Florida and we moved to Oregon. He took me down to Child Protective Services and dropped me off and said, you can't come home, which is another, very traumatic thing because he was serious about it. You're not coming back to this house. And frankly, while it was very traumatic, what it made me do was prove that he was fucking wrong about me. And it gave me a motivation to be really good in school and to get a good job and make a bunch of money. And it was a negative thing that happened to me, but it provided motivation for me to prove that he was wrong. And I found a lot of times great founders have some motivation that might have been created by trauma that drives them. And in my case, it was to prove my dad was wrong about me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Alone Together. Thank you all for joining. And I'm so excited and thank you for all the support that I've been getting about the shows. It's so there are dozens of you watching right now. Today, I'm so excited to bring on Martin Tobias from Incisive Ventures. And it's really special because Martin's done so much in the tech ecosystem for a long time and a whole bunch of things outside. And I'm excited just to have him on. We've been trying to schedule this for a bit, mostly my schedule, and I apologize. But we met at Camp Hustle. I mean, ironically, even though we've swam in so many circles closely and shared so many friends. Most recently, I mean, we were both on Cyrus's podcast about Ali as well.
Absolutely.
Ali Jamal from First Check. So with a more happy note than the passing of our common friend, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making time.
Well, thanks. I've enjoyed a couple of your other conversations with my friends, so happy to get into it.
For sure. Well, I mean, can you set us up a little bit about the fund, and Incisive, just for context for the listeners, for those like 0.2% of you who don't know you, and because you're very prolific on and I appreciate all the content you put out there. Can you give us a little backset on Incisive and tell us a little bit about that, and we'll tuck into some juicier bits.
Sure. So I've been running Incisive Ventures for about 5 years as a full-time VC. Prior to that, I was 3 times a venture-funded CEO. I'm an LP in 17 funds. I'd done about 250 angel investments. But basically, when the pandemic started back in 2020, the company I was running got closed down. And I was like, I don't know what kind of fucking company I would start in the middle of a pandemic. So maybe I'll go invest again. And a bunch of people wanted to invest with me and liked what I was doing. So I started a syndicate, then I started a fund. But basically, this is what I've decided to do with the rest of my career, is to kind of be an investor and a coach. And so I closed Incisive Ventures Fund 1. Well, my first fund was a $2.5 million sort of fund 0 on Angel List. And I had a syndicate where I deployed about $35 million. And Fund 1 is where I own all the entities. I'm the GP and everything. And it's just a little over $10 million. We do B2B pre-seed investing. And I'm going to do a Fund 2 maybe next year. But this is what I'm going to do, is keep helping founders as their first check into a $1 million, $2 million round, writing a $250,000 to $500,000 check in B2B software. And there's a reason why I'm just doing B2B software versus hardware and crypto and all that other crap. But we can get into that if you want.
Sure. Oh crap! I just did a hardware deal. But anyways,
there's
okay.
No problem with hardware. I mean, what I think every manager should lean into where they believe they have a superpower. And I have no superpowers related to hardware. 100%. I don't have a problem with hardware investing. I've done hardware investing. I know other people are good at it. I am not. That is not a superpower for me. So that is why I'm not investing in it.
Totally. I was just joking. It's funny. It just came up on a whole bunch of other things about doing hardware or not. That's why it's top of mind. But can I just ask some sizing questions for a second? Like, you've been a founder. You're talking 2, 10 angel list syndicates. The first question comes to mind is like, well, and I'll use your parlance. Like, why the fuck are you doing this? Like, you've raised like what? Like, as a founder, you've raised more than like what, $500 million? Yeah, more than $500 million. So we're talking like 9 figures. And is there a part of you like why are you doing this? Like, I guess why what trauma have you not rectified in your life that you're doing this? All kidding aside, where we're talking, I mean, to square this up, you're dealing in you've had such, 500 million, 550 million, like, and I say the numbers 2 and 10 and precede and like, going 250K checks, like a little bit, like why personally from
Yeah.
a personal, like why?
Well, the short answer is I suck at golf and I'm a failure at retirement. I've tried 2 or 3 times to retire. After I took my first company public, I had $500 million on the balance sheet and I retired for 2 years. But, after 2 years, I had a 3-year-old at home. I knew every word of every Teletubbies song, and I hadn't had a conversation with an adult other than my wife for 2 years. My brain just went to mush. I'm an insanely curious guy, and I just like learning about new ideas, meeting new people. And at this stage in my career, I mean, I had the decision about 5 years ago when I started Incisive, do I go back and be a CEO or do I be an investor? And I just made the decision on a work-life balance to be an investor, mostly because I had to have something to do. Like, I have a house in Hawaii. I could go sit on the beach and surf if I wanted to. I have enough money, but I get bored super easily. And
But
I'm insanely curious.
let me push this a little bit though. Like, why not like do the public board thing like why not take that time? I get being bad at golf. I'm, not great at it either. Not enjoying, but like why you're doing we're like in the same deals. Like you're like, we're trying to get in the same deals back for like,
Yep.
why this? Like, is there an argument like, hey, you've been way up here, why are you gonna, and I'll just use this word, and I'm happy slumming it, but why are you slumming it down here with us pre-seed folk? Like, why?
Well,
I just want to
I
I want to
actually
push that
don't
same
think
time.
I don't think pre-seed is slumming it. As you go up the stack in stages, certainly to public companies, I've been on 3 public company boards. It's mostly about politics. It's not about the business. It's not about growing the business as much. It's more about the politics on the board. It's about regulation. Frankly, the part I like the 0 to 50 people. I like the idea stage. And I like seeing that gleam in a founder's eye and helping them get going. Frankly, when you get, one of my companies, Loud Eye Technologies, I started it by myself. And at one point we had 1,000 employees. When I had 1,000 employees, I was the most unhappy person you've ever fucking met because it's just all politics. It's all employees. It's all scaling. It's all bullshit. I love the early stages. Not everything works, but that you just get a lot more excitement and interest and engagement from the founders. For me, it's the exciting part of startups. It's not that exciting when you're going from B to C.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just
I'm
not
with you.
exciting.
I'm with you.
I
I'm
mean,
with
there's
you.
maybe more money to be made, writing bigger checks, you get bigger fees, you get to fly around in a jet. But, I don't care about any of that. I want to be around mission driven, like excited entrepreneurs and see if I can help them in some small way make their vision a reality and go along with their journey. By the time you've gotten to the A or the B, you're doing a lot of things that are not necessarily about the journey anymore. It's just not interesting to me.
Yeah. So I wanted your thought about being a dad and being an investor. And I wrote
Yeah.
in my last newsletter, Founders, I Love You, the Purplist. And I was just kind of retelling the view I have as a dad of just loving each founder differently, versus more or less. I don't know, man. I'm just kind of curious about your perspective. Am I crazy? Do you have a line? We've talked a lot about in our pre-interview being a girl dad, which we're both girl dads, and being an investor and taking care of all these founders. Is there anything, is there a there for you, about thinking about taking care of as someone who's written so many checks? And is there a space where there's an intersection at all between how you think your role as a girl dad and as an investor? And I'm just curious if to explore that space with you.
Well, I hadn't thought about it, and I appreciate the question. One of the interesting things my kids don't really know a lot about what I do. Like I have a 24-year-old who's in Georgetown Medical going to medical school. I have a 14-year-old and I have a 10-year-old. Her birthday's tomorrow. And the
Oh, wow.
14-year-old had to do this career day thing where she had to go and make a presentation in her class about what her dad did. And she starts asking, she goes, "What do you do, Dad?" And she's like, "All I see is you talking on the Zoom call all the time. I have absolutely no idea what you do." And I had to explain to her what venture capital was. And she's like, "I don't understand." But she's not an entrepreneurial person at all. But some of the things that I've learned about, in investing and thinking about it versus my kids. The other thing is, each of your kids are very different.
Yes.
And they have different personalities, and they also will throw you for an unexpected loop, which also happens with all the founders. You invest in a guy or a woman and you think they're this way, and then they go off the rails. The same thing happened most challengingly recently. I don't know how old your girls are, but my 14-year-old got her first boyfriend, and I had to deal with finding
Oh,
seeing a
no.
hickey on for the first time. And it was something I was not prepared for. And the same thing happens in startups. Something comes through that you're not prepared for, and you have to roll with it and, learn a new way to work through a problem that you've never thought through before. And frankly, I think that's the exciting part for me because I keep learning as a parent and as an investor.
Yeah. Well, so much of what you're learning is, like you said, informs your investing. It's almost a selfish journey sometimes, as we were talking about in learning through investing. What are the things, maybe if you can separate like sort of Martin the investor and Martin the human and citizen of this planet, what are some of the things you're interested in right now? And then I'm curious if you can draw a line to some of the things you're interested in investing in, because you kind of gave us this theme of like interested in solving real world problems and I'm kind of curious about how the human connects to the investor in your mind.
Yeah. I'm interested in a lot of things that I'm not investing in. I'm interested in longevity. I'm interested in a lot of fitness things. I made one or two fitness investments. They didn't go well. Um, so I know where I'm going to split my investments. I'm super curious about on the longevity. I mean, I'm 61 now and I've got young kids, and I got to see how um, I can live a healthy life for as long as possible. My dad died with prostate cancer and had 5 years on drugs with cancer. And I don't want that to be the way I go out. So I'm thinking a lot about those kind of things right now in my personal life, is how to expand health span. I'm listening a lot to, Peter Tia and Andrew Huberman, and I'm going crazy on the biohacking things. I've been to, Costa Rica to get stem cells and I have a $500,000 home gym because I'm crazy about fitness, but mostly because I want to be there and be present for my kids and my portfolio companies.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about it. Like, I think it's interesting to think about the longevity aspect of it. And I admit, like, I don't, it's not my area, but I think I had kids young, and maybe that's the part of it. Like the, I haven't really conceived of it as like being around for your kids, because I'm almost in the other end of the spectrum. I'll invest in death tech, and um and I have an end of life thesis around it. My joke is the TAM is 100% on, on that.
Yeah,
Everyone's going to be part
everybody's
of
going
that.
to die.
Um, does that?
I haven't done anything in death tech or senior care stuff. I have a couple of friends like at Primetime Ventures that do a lot of that. I'm none of those that personal interest in longevity has switched into my investing. Even though I looked at a couple, I did do one or two there. Like I was an investor in Levels, which is a CGM monitor that monitors your metabolic health. I was very interested in that whole area of using software to help people live better lives, like make better nutritional choices or fitness choices. and Levels is doing very well. But most of the times, those businesses, the economics are not as good as B2B software businesses, so I don't invest in them. I got
Yeah.
super lucky with one CPG company. I don't invest in CPG, but I was a customer of Element, which is electrolytes, stick packs of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And I understood the value of that. For anybody that works out, you're probably under salted. I invested in the company, but I had basically because I love the product. They were doing about $2 million a year of revenue when I invested. Last year, they did 355 million, and they're just crushing it. But I got lucky there. I didn't have any particular insight into how the CPG drinks market worked.
Yeah. I mean, is
And I don't
you
think in my investing, I don't think I can replicate luck. I think I can replicate a business model, which is why I'm just doing the B2B software stuff now.
gotcha? I mean, you played two roles though, right? Like you said, you've been an LP and you obviously are a GP as well. Do the same metrics and parameters? Like you'll look at things that aren't B2B or as an LP, or do you keep a
No,
tight
as an
thesis?
LP. So
Yeah,
for example, like I mentioned, you mentioned you did a hardware deal. I'm an LP in a crypto fund. Why? Because I want exposure to crypto, but I'm not smart enough to figure out what the good deals in crypto are. So I hire a manager to go do that for me.
for sure.
Right.
Gotcha.
um, is it a good use of my time to try to figure out which way Bitcoin is going or Ethereum or evaluate all those deals? No. And so as an LP, I'm an LP in some funds that are investing in interesting categories that I think are potentially interesting that could create potential value, but I'm not an expert in. But the last 5 funds that I've joined, frankly, are, for example, I was an LP in Ali Jamal's fund, and mostly because I thought Ali had a really good finger on the pulse of what's going on in Latin America. He was investing earlier than me. He was investing kind of angel type checks. And I wanted to hear and see what he was seeing in the market, because what I wanted to do was invest in those companies when they raised their next round. And in fact, I did. I just invested in a company in Mexico called Mango Finance, which is doing construction financing, and he was the angel investor. And I learned about the company through his LP updates, and then I participated in the bigger round, and that's why I did it. That's why I was
I
an
love
LP. So I'm mostly joining funds as LP now to speed up my investment from the fund.
totally. And I had the same things about I do not have enough disposable capital to be doing tons of LP checks, but I had the same experience with Ali. That was my Sudden Cyrus podcast. It's like every time I talk to a LatAm founder and I start talking, it's like, have you talked to Ali? He's like, oh yeah, Ali from first check. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
God damn that guy. He's always in a deal
You hear
before
that
me.
enough and you're like, that guy's got his finger on fucking everything.
Yes, he does.
I did another fund recently. I became an LP in Jonathan Chang's fund out of San Francisco. He works in business development at Brex, and he has a small fund, but he's meeting like literally everybody in San Francisco. That's like 2 guys and a dog. And I've done 3 deals that he invested in, and I discovered them as being an LP in his fund.
Amazing. I'd love to turn some of this into some of the other stories, like moving out of investing, because we could probably nerd out about this all day.
Yeah.
And I had some of my uh my team kind of go through and you shared some stuff, but I want to ask you about some of the things about you as a person, if you will go around. So we spent a little time on your Instagram and we found 3 things: girl dad stuff, which is
Yeah.
awesome, tacos, and watches. I'm kind of curious, like, if you can give some commentary to the audience about like what are some of the things that tie this thread together, and what are the stories about those 3 things we found?
Girl dad tacos, and I missed the third thing.
Watches.
Oh yeah. So mostly on Instagram, I just post personal stuff, and so it's a lot of pictures of me and my daughters and girl dad stuff, which I like. I for Instagram, for me, it's the personal things, and then personally, my favorite food is tacos, and so I just like post about that all the time. I actually, I used to own a software company in Austin, and I found a book down there. They listed 300 different breakfast tacos just in Austin, Texas. And so I made it my mission to go like to 100 of them. I don't know. I'm just on I'm curious about so many things, and tacos is one thing I'm curious about. And then in terms of watches, I'm wearing a manual watch. I only wear manual watches. I don't wear electronic watches. And part of the reason is I was at a TED conference about 15 years ago, and Nicholas Negroponte was there. And he was wearing a manual watch. And at the time he was, the, leader of
MIT
the
media.
internet and all things digital and all that stuff. And when I'm talking to him, I said, why are you wearing a manual watch? You're like the king of the internet and software and everything. And he said, it's because of the craftsmanship. And it's because of it reminds me of, the value of human work and craftsmanship, which is something I want to be reminded of even when I'm thinking about technology. And so that's why I own about 50 watches, and I went crazy on watches, but all manual, all chronographs, to gain an appreciation of the human craftsmanship, which I think is helpful when you're considering software investing too. I want to have founders that have an appreciation for the craft of what they're doing, not just the glitzy things of slapping on a business plan or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to create my watches.
Let's go there. Like, what does that look like? That sounds great. And as a tagline, like, I really want to work with founders to understand the craft of being a founder. It's something I actually wrote in one of my public memos about. What does that look like for you? How do you get to that? What is your diligence process, your curiosity process look like to see if there's craft?
Well, I did an AMA this morning, and one of the people's on Twitter, and one of the guys asked me, how do you pick a good pre-seed? What do you want to see in a good pre-seed founder? And what I said was, I want to see somebody that's been obsessing about a problem for a really long time, and that they have come up with some new approach to an old problem that's taking some new technology trend or some new invention, and they've got a new solution to an old problem that they think finally will work. And what I don't like to see in founders is people that read a Gartner report and saw an opportunity for a market thing. The worst kind of founders are people that came out of like Harvard Business School, and they did a whole bunch of case studies, and they found some market niche that Gartner or their case study says is interesting, and they're building there because they think it's an interesting market. I'm not interested in those founders. What I'm looking for in a founder is a guy that's so fucking obsessed about the particular problem area that they've spent a long time. They tried 10 different ways to solve it. And they now found like a co-founder, a technical co-founder, or they found something in the new version of ChatGPT or whatever that allows them to solve an old problem in a new way. And it's sort of cracked an old problem they've been thinking about for a long time. That's what I'm really looking for in a pre-seed founder, is somebody, solving an old problem in a new way.
I'm curious. Do you have any stories that of a tortilla founder, of a manual founder that comes to mind?
So I have two of them. One of them, so I met this guy in Spokane, where I live, a guy named Chris Bleisner, and he started a company about 15 years ago called Second Watch, which was a managed service provider. And managed service providers are people that were basically doing outsourced cloud management for enterprises when they implemented the cloud. And they hired a bunch of systems engineers, and they managed people's AWS environments and everything. They managed their cloud implementations, but they did it all with systems engineers. He ran that business for 10 years. He raised venture capital. He ended up selling it. It was an okay exit. It was like a $100 million exit, but he had problems the entire time managing that cloud infrastructure for other people, because it was all people, and they had custom scripts, and they wrote all these queries and stuff. So it was like duct tape and baling wire to run this business. And anytime he gained a new customer, he had to hire more people, and 30,000 person shortage of cloud systems engineers. So he was trying to scale a constrained resource. And so he had struggles running that business. It ended up being an okay exit, but when he sold the business, he's like, I I have the same problem, which is I want to help enterprises manage their clouds better, but I have to do it in software. And this new AI thing will allow me to get more information on about how people communicate. Anyway, so he rewrote what he did at Second Watch for a company called Vega Cloud, which was using software and scalable software to manage the cloud environment and reduce cloud expense and turn processes on and off. Anyway, it worked, and it ended up being a much more scalable way to manage people's clouds for them than it was with people. But it was the same problem, just a new technology approach that ended up being more scalable and higher margin. That was one. A second company in my portfolio, I invested in this company called Procurable AI, which is a supply chain procurement for discrete manufacturing industries. This guy was a VP of procurement for a rocket engine manufacturer for 6 years. And he had all sorts of problems in procurement, and he had all the latest procurement software. He had like, I think it's called Core or something like that. But anyway, he had ERPs, he had all this SaaS software, but he was always asking his analysts, what about this? What about that? Do I have enough components coming in to meet my manufacturing schedule? He had for 6 years gaps in his information of being able to actually manage the supply chain better. And he's like, I think I can do better. But it was a personal problem as a customer that he had with the software. He went around, he tried to buy every piece of software he could. He got so frustrated that he's like, I'm just going to fucking build my own. And so he built a thing called Procurable, which is a new procurement information architecture that sits on top of your existing ERP and everything. But basically, he was solving his own personal problem as a customer. And then the nice part of it is also is that, he used to run a trade association of other customers, VPs of procurement. So he knew the first 100 customers for his software, but he was doing exactly the same thing, solving an old problem that he had in his business with new software and a new approach that he understood very well.
Yeah. And it's more than that too, is like there's like pain and suffering and struggle, right? And through all that. And that's what
Yeah,
I'm
it's
actually
pain and suffering. And the kind of founders that I like are pain and suffering of founders that have sat in their potential customer seat, because they can sell better to the customer. They're like, because they go, I've been in your seat.
Yeah, it's empathy.
I tried to buy everything. I found the problems. I solved the problems. Here's the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's empathy. I love that,
Yeah.
thinking through that. I mean, this is like, a lot of what we do at my side is it's kind of, I don't know, our fun. We take 30 days and sit with them and actually watch them in the seat and sit with them and try and solve it with the seat. And what I'm drawing a line between what we do, it's like watching that that is the craftsmanship of like watching that, like the artist struggle with the piece of
Yeah.
clay, right?
I like your approach because you spend a lot more time with them. I mean, I don't spend as much time, but one of the things, I try to do is to, ask them questions like, okay, you've got customers, like, how do you prioritize your tickets? How do you prioritize the
Yeah.
work? Every startup is incredibly constrained in their resources. And what you want to see is how the CEO thinks about prioritizing his resources. Are they making good decisions? Are they making bad decisions?
Totally.
Are they good at, addressing bottlenecks when they come up? How do they do it? And it's in all the things that they do. And I like your process by spending, a little more time. I ask them questions and call their references and try to get that answer. But figuring out how good a problem solver the CEO is a big part of the diligence for me.
Yeah. Totally. It actually leads into another part that I didn't know that we both share, is about decision making. My staff found like you're a poker player.
I'm a huge poker player. Yeah.
Tell me about your theory of poker, and with a little bit of a bent of because I talk to my founders about thinking in bets, much like you. Like
Do
we have
you
to see how
recommend
you
that they
organize
read
your
that
time.
book?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Annie Duke.
Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets, I give that to all my founders, because the game of poker Texas Hold'em, and the game of being a startup founder or being a VC investor is very similar. It is
Yeah.
a game of low information and risk-adjusted capital allocation decisions
Yes.
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You start the game in poker, you've got 2 cards. You can know based on the math what the probability of your 2 cards against any other random cards is. And then the question is, do you invest, the blinds or a raise based on the probability of what the assets you have at the time, which is exactly the same thing that a founder would do. Me and my co-founder, and we've got, some experience. And, do we invest our time to build this thing based on the probability of an outcome that we think? And then you go build the thing. So you get the next 3 cards in poker. Then you have a second decision. Did my odds get better or did they get worse? Do I want to bluff or did my odds get better and my hand stronger? And you have another capital allocation decision, which is the same thing after you build the MVP. You have another capital allocation decision, right? Do I put more in to build a full version? Do I try to raise more capital? Am I more or less confident in my ability? Do I want to pivot? Do I want to fold and start a new hand? It's a very similar process in my mind. I think it's also very instructive. One of the things I try to do, if I can, is play poker with my founders. In fact, one of my companies, Grow AI, which is a AI sales coach, I met him at the poker table in SaaStr last year. And I was, at the conference and I was playing in the founder and VC tournament. And this guy next to me, I noticed that he was a really good poker player. And so before I knew anything about him, I noticed he was a good poker player. And then I said, hey, you're a good poker player. What are you building? Are you a founder? And he's like, yes, I'm a founder and this is what I'm building. I didn't want to hear about his company until I knew if he was a good poker player or not.
Yeah. For those who don't play, you've been talking a lot about thinking in bets in the left side of the equation and playing poker, right? And sizing your bets and thinking, okay, well, I have 9 outs, right? I've this, over 45 cards left. I have a probability of hitting this. There's a very left brain component of it. I'm curious about your thought about the right brain component of it, because part of it and part of playing poker for those who don't play, one is the data will tell you what the probabilities are and limit the set of possible moves. At the end of the day, though, it does not tell you this is the answer. It will generate a small list of things, but then the carbon-based life form with with feelings, thoughts, nervousness, insecurities, tiredness, fatigue, sometimes alcohol and impairments, have to make a decision. I'm curious, one, just to make this very long question, tie it, like, do you underwrite some of the psychological human parts of it in your poker playing? And then curious, do you have any of this in how you think about underwriting founders?
Yes, I do. And that's a really good and insightful question. The math in my mind is the basics of poker. What makes you a great poker or not is, can you exploit your opponent's weaknesses? Can you play your position better? Can you take advantage of where you have an advantage? Like if you're on the button, I might raise with 7-2 on the button just because it's the fucking button, right? If it limps around to me. And the odds say you shouldn't because 7-2 is the worst hand in poker, but the position and the way that the hand played out that everybody checks tells me that everybody else is weak. So I want to see that kind of thinking and understanding in my founders. And one of the things that I think is super interesting when you're playing poker, for example, I was in Sri Lanka playing poker with one of my CEOs, and his CFO was there. And the CFO played poker incredibly differently than the CEO did. You want to see a CEO being a lot more aggressive than your CFO in poker. Your CFO, you want him to be playing the numbers and just the math and not trying to read characters or making moves as much. If you see a CEO playing like a CFO, you don't want to give that CEO money because he's not going to take the appropriate amount of risks. Taking appropriate and calculated risks is part of being a CEO.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. It's funny when you started talking, I started thinking about a different aspect, but at the same vector. And this is why, again, for those who don't play, like I do think it's worthwhile to learn to play poker, even recreationally. We're
Yes.
both terrible golf players, but like poker is such a better aspect of it from the perspective you learn stuff. And there's for me, and tell me how this sits with you. I'm always interested in the character, and how someone suffers a bad beat when or suffers a loss, a statistically improbable loss that shouldn't happen, which guts you, like it just feels terrible.
Yes.
I'm always interested in this part of it too, which is a different vector in the psychology, is like, how do you deal with it? Because you know what?
Right.
That's life. That's a customer leaving
That,
you, your co-founder leaving you, or someone writing something about you slanderous on TechCrunch or whatever. Like that's just life. And poker has no time for misery. If you lose a big pot, you know what
no,
happens? The next hand comes out. And I'm always
exactly.
interested to
So
see
that's what I
how
want.
that. Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
want to see people's reaction to improbable events. And lots of improbable events will happen in poker. The odds can be something and they can still go against you. The question is, how do you react to that? Do you continue going even if odds go against you, knowing that you have an enterprise value positive strategy, or do you get tilted and allow the improbable thing to tilt you? If you allow the improbable thing to tilt you in poker, you're probably going to allow the improbable thing to tilt you in business, which is not good.
Yeah. This we could talk about poker all day, but I definitely love that about you. We'd love to talk. We should play sometime, and put that together.
Absolutely.
But I think for those who are listening, like I do think it's been so. What I'm taking from this is we're both very interested in underwriting the people. And it's so interesting to find different ways in. The business is the business, and like we'll find the math is the math and the odds are the odds. But at the end of the day, when people say, I used to bristle at the word taste. I don't know why that used to bother me in terms of picking, but we're really talking about, different ways in. And I think poker is such an interesting parable
Po-
for
po-
that. Or
poker poker is a good way to do it. But what I'm really digging into, founders, is I'm trying to figure out, do you have what it takes to really go through the shit and eat the shit sandwiches that you're going to have to eat to make this thing successful? Do you have that extra bit of motivation? That's why I like people that are working on old problems in a new way. If they've been obsessing about something for 10 years and now there's this new technology that helps them solve it, they're going to have a little extra motivation versus the guy that just is coming into it on a mercenary basis because he saw a Gartner report. And
yeah,
that's what I've found makes the difference between successful founders, is that they've got whatever, however they got it, a motivation to eat the shit sandwiches and to get through the thing and have resilience and get up and keep going. And a subcomponent of that is, how do they handle conflict and how do they make decisions, good risk adjusted capital allocation decisions over time? Those are the two things I try to focus on.
can I use this to take that and talk about eating a shit sandwich and improbable things, and ask you about something that you shared
Sure.
in your pre-interview notes? I mean, you said you were kicked out of your house by your dad when you were 16. That
Yeah.
sounds, without knowing the details, that sounds like an enormously huge shit sandwich. Can you take us back to that moment? You said it
That
was the
was
best thing that was the best thing that ever happened to you, because that doesn't make any sense to me. Could I use that as our shit sandwich poker discussion as an invitation to ask you a little bit about that story and why that was the best moment, and take us a little bit to that story if you could?
sure. So when I was 16, my father, well, we moved we were living in Florida and we moved to Oregon, and he got remarried to his then third wife, and their three kids moved into the house, and we had three kids, and I basically didn't get along with the new wife or the new kids, and I was being a grumpy, 16-year-old asshole. And they basically decided that me and my older brother, the two older kids that were causing all the conflict in the house, had to go. So she convinced him to kick both of his original sons out of the house and keep her kids in the house. Um, And I was in high school. My brother, luckily, was going off to college, so he got to go to college, but I was not. So anyway, they said, you're not getting along with this family. You're not molding to this new wife, so you're gone. And he put me on a plane to go to see my mother, who lived in Florida. And he didn't call her and tell her that I was coming until after I was on the plane. So, being told you're not wanted when you're 16 is pretty tough. And, the interesting thing, I've heard other VCs say chips on your shoulder, put chips in your pocket. That was a chip on my shoulder.
That's
And
a big
frankly, what
fucking
it
chip.
big hopping chip, because when your father tells you like, I don't want, and so I lived in Florida for about 6 months with my mom, and I didn't like it there either. So I saved up my money. I bought a plane ticket and I flew back. When I landed back in Medford, he met me at the airport and he took me down to Child Protective Services and dropped me off and said, you can't come home, which is another, very traumatic thing, because he was serious about it. You're not coming back to this house. And frankly, while it was very traumatic, what it made me do was prove that he was fucking wrong about me. And it gave me a motivation to be really good in school and to get a good job and make a bunch of money. And it was a negative thing that happened to me, but it provided motivation for me to prove that he was wrong. And I found a lot of times great founders have some motivation that might have been created by trauma that drives them. And in my case, it was to prove my dad was wrong about me.
Do you feel you did that?
I do. Yeah. I mean, when I took my first company public and I had the Wall Street Journal printed my net worth and it was over $500 million, I sent him a link to the story.
What did he say?
He did not respond.
Yeah. That's deep.
He died and we still had a troubled, we never really reconciled.
Oh my
God.
God.
But it was definitely a very strong motivation for me. The other thing I learned from that is that can be a powerful motivation, but it also can really burn you out.
Yeah.
And I sort of gave that up after the IPO, because basically when I did the IPO of my first company, I had all that money on I like everything that I thought I wanted to prove, I had done. Married, kids, giant pile of money. Like, what else is there to do? And the last, 15 years, 20 years has been, okay, now what? Like, I used to give this speech. I don't give it anymore, but maybe I should redo it, which is, I hope you don't get what you want, because then you're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Like, if your whole life has been driving to prove this one thing and then you do it, whether it's an amount of money or whether it's an achievement in business or whatever, then the very first question is, okay, now what? Right? And some people keep going on the money or keep going on the relationships. But for me, I think that's why I ended up being a VC, is because the now what is, instead of making it all about you, then maybe you should help other people, get their dreams done. And that's how I ended up being a VC. Is that I realized it wasn't all about me anymore.
I'm curious, and tell me if this is too hot. I'm curious how your father would react to that, not just the journal link. I'm curious if he would have a reaction, or you could also say, fuck him, don't care. I'm just kind of,
I don't know how he would. I didn't talk to him for like the last 10 years of his life. So I don't know. I mean, I think he would be proud if you stacked up all the kids. Like, I'm the most financially successful kid of them, but is that the important thing? I don't know. I don't think in his mind that's the most important.
Thank you for sharing that. That was unexpected, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to think a lot about that. But as an investor,
I don't think I've talked about that on a podcast yet.
I'm thank you for your vulnerability and trust to do that. Like it's something I'm thinking about as a dad, and I have a 16-year-old son right now. Not yet. 2 months, 3 months will be
2
16, and
months, great.
some of these things are bubbling up. So that is for sure top of mind for
Well,
me.
it's definitely something that you think about, and you think about how your parents treated you, and you try to, and now that you've got kids, you're saying, what am I going to do? The same, different, whatever. I hope my relationship with my kids when they get older is better than mine was with mine, but I'm not sure. My wife and I always talk about there's going to be all sorts of trauma that we don't really know about till later. But the same things that happened to me are not going to happen. Like, for example, I cannot imagine, I don't know how you are, I can't imagine any scenario. I don't care what my kids did where I would kick them out of the house. I cannot imagine that. But to my dad, it made sense at the time. And I think what made sense to him was he was married to his third wife, and his third wife said, it's either them or me. And he made his choice, which is to stay with the wife. Okay. But I can't imagine making that decision. I could never make that decision, to not be around my kids.
Right? There's a saying, right? It's not home is where your hat is. Home is wherever you knock, they have to let you in. And
Yeah.
what I see with your investing and kind of generosity, even gosh, your content footprint is kind of like it's like a lot of doors to home. So I definitely appreciate that. And that's what I see for all my completely unqualified dime store psychology on our short time together. And it's what I think has been really unexpected, now 45, 50 minutes in our time together. It's really cool. And I'm processing it right now as well.
Absolutely. Well, good luck with that 16-year-old son.
Oh God, I'll take it. I can, you and I could yak all day, for sure. And I look forward to doing that over. Go easy on me if we play, okay? If we
I would
play
love to
cards.
play sometime.
But
I'll come down.
I have a last, I always say the last four, fast four, just to kind of wrap this up and put a pretty bow on our
Okay.
conversation. Tell me in terms of in context. Well, you know what? It doesn't have to be in context of fun. Like, tell me about. It's normally the context of fun, but our conversation's gone so wide. Like, tell me about the absolute best day. It could be about the fun that you've had, but I'm just kind of curious if I said, what was the absolute best day you've had while you've been on this journey? What is it? What is it quickly?
Usually my best days are when I get to go for a bike ride and a surf and hang out with my family. That's the best day.
And maybe since you shared so much about your father, but like maybe just in the context of the journey of Incisive, what was the actual
Yeah.
worst day that you've had?
The worst day at Incisive. I don't think I've had a worst day. I've had LPs not make their capital call, which was a pretty bad day.
That sucks.
I've
You
had
know who
two
you are if
companies
you're
go
listening.
bankrupt.
If you're listening,
Exactly.
you
I've
know who
had
you
two
are.
companies go bankrupt, but that's kind of expected. Probably the worst day for me as an investor, not in this fund, but I invested in three companies whose CEOs ended up perpetrating fraud against the investors, like lying about their numbers, lying about their revenue. The worst day for me is when I back somebody that I think is honest and they turn out to be dishonest. That's the worst day for me
Of all your
in venture.
careers and travel and successes, I mean, is there anyone that stands out to you want to shout out and thank?
The person I want to thank for my curiosity and venture and everything is Ron Conway. I don't know if you know him. He started Silicon Valley Angels. He was the first venture capitalist that I ever met. When I was a manager at Microsoft, I had a bunch of extra money, and I met him, and he said, and I was said, I'd like to do investing, and he said, well, that's what I do. I'm a venture capitalist. I'm like, what's a venture capitalist? And I joined his fund, and he gave Larry and Sergey their first $250,000. Some of those Google shares that I got in the IPO, I still own. My cost basis is 50 cents on Google. That's been a lifetime lesson of the value of getting in early to truly transformative companies. And Ron Conway is still an incredibly generous guy. I can text him today and he will text me back 30 years later.
Yeah.
Incredibly gracious, amazing.
Yeah, I don't know him. I mean, I know of him, obviously OG SV Angels for sure, but far beyond. So
OG.
amazing. Last one for you. How do you want to be remembered?
I haven't had to answer that question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to be remembered. I just want the world to go on.
Oh, I love that. I not expected, but I think I understand it. But I'm gonna like our other conversation. I'm gonna think about that for a bit, and something we
You
could
know,
yak
like
about again.
if I don't want my kids coming to my grave, I want them living their lives with their own agency. And if I didn't set them up enough to be able to live their own lives, then I failed.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, listen, you are super prolific and out there, and I'm sure people want to reach out to you. What's the best way to get a hold of you other than putting together a card
The
table?
best way to get a hold of me is to follow me on Twitter. It's at Martin G. Tobias, and you can DM me there. Pitch me if you have an idea. And I have an AI clone that does a really good job of answering questions if I'm unable to get back to you.
Amazing. Martin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I mean, not just your time, but honestly, just going deep on a lot of stuff. It's been an honor. I look forward to doing that again in a different context. And thanks for coming by the pod.
Absolutely. I hope to hang out soon. Thanks for doing this.
For sure. All
Talk to you
right.
later.
Take care for everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Alone Together. Please like and subscribe if you're liking this content. Help us out. Get more stories like this and into the ecosystem, and then we'll see you out there next time.